just for a change, the BBC are using their drama department as a thinly veiled guise to push their relentless propaganda. A worldview that imagines that their left liberal mindset is right about absolutely everything. In Ridley Road, the message is repeatedly rammed home that fascists are everywhere, spouting their evil anti-Semitism, and that only nice, brave and committed left-wing people, led by a strong independent woman, can stand up to and defeat them. Well, obviously, because, there's never been any anti-Semitism on the left at all. Naturally, loads of clunking allusions to our contemporary situation are shoehorned in. So, for instance, the evil, male, white fascists make continual references to taking back control. You know, just like, Brexiteers, who happen to make up the majority of the BBC's captive audience. But screw those people. Ridley Road takes the standard, preachy and po-faced tone of the BBC, hammering home its points with the subtlety of a sledgehammer wielded by a deranged maniac. And it pushes exactly the same agenda as, everything that's ever been on the biased broadcasting company for at least 50 years. Perhaps the worst example of this is Doctor Who. Now look, there's long been something of a political undertone to Doctor Who. But in the past, that was the subtext to decent stories, with good characterisation, tales that were exciting and stylish. Well, usually. Sometimes. Anyway, the point is that the focus was on the story. And if it was informed by the writer's politics, then that's fine. But recent years have seen that inverted, with the message taking precedent. And it's become nothing but tokenism and clunky lectures in a TV series that's become really quite astoundingly boring. Viewing figures plummeted and complaints rocketed. So the makers responded by deriding the fans as racist, misogynistic gammons. Yes, it's the fans' fault that the show's failed so badly. Of course. No, mate. The problem is that your programme is shit. Oh, and by the way, it is possible to make brilliant sci-fi with a kick-ass strong woman protagonist. Your attempt just massively sucks. Now, the BBC's continual determination to ram its woke, identarian worldview into everything infects its news services too, which have become preoccupied with advancing propaganda, with elbowing objective reporting aside so that they can continually force their narrative down the viewer's throats all the time. And the main thing they will never understand is this. It's possible to be not remotely racist, sexist, misogynistic or transphobic, but to still resent being continually lectured, told what to think, and spoon-fed clumsy, trite and blatant propaganda by an organisation that has a legal obligation to do the exact opposite. Most people don't like being talked down to like they're 5-year-olds by self-satisfied, paternalistic and metropolitan simpletons who have nothing but visible contempt for the unwashed masses who live outside their smug little bubble. And the worst crime of all is that the rest of us are forced by law to pay the BBC so they can ram their propaganda down our throats, while making plain their disdain for the vast majority of people who are forced to pay their bloated and grasping wages. The other really pertinent point is that the BBC is a big enough organisation to allow for a variety of views. But despite all their proclamations to the contrary, there's no diversity at the BBC. There's no diversity of thought, no diversity of opinion, no diversity of humour, and no diversity of values. At all. But despite this, the BBC refuse to accept any suggestions that they're less than perfect. And if they refuse to accept the problem that's obvious to everyone else, then they will never change. Their main defence revolves around the fact that, as they get criticism from both left and right, then they must be doing something right. But this is to approach that debate from the wrong angle. Obviously, there are plenty of people so barkingly left-wing that anyone to the right of Stalin looks right-wing to them. So they despise the centre-left BBC. And the Beeb do make some concessions to appear objective, grudging though they are. But what we should really be doing is not looking at who criticises the BBC, but at who defends it. And if someone speaks up to commend the Beeb as an objective, impartial source, then you can be 100% guaranteed that that person will be left-wing. I will bet my house on it. Like I'd bet my life that Russell T Davies will make the next Doctor Who gay. Because you can never have enough tokenism or identity politics to sate the BBC's appetite. Now, the Tories recently installed Tim Davie, a former Tory MP, as Director General, in the hope that he can restore some balance to the organisation. So far, his appointment has made no difference at all. And being that the vast majority of his staff don't share his inclinations, I have little faith that he'll engender any real change. Now, I could give you countless examples of the BBC's left-wing bias, but I'll conclude by giving you just one. A while back, the Beeb aired a 2-part documentary called The Summer of Love, How Hippies Changed the World. And as part of that programme, which focused on 1967, they interviewed Bernardine Dawn and Elaine Brown. Both women were given free rein to wax lyrical about that magical period of free love, wild abandon, great music, sex and drugs. And that was it. But there's some information on those women that the BBC decided to omit. Because both women were central figures in the leadership of terrorist groups, and both have been implicated in a series of brutal murders. Elaine Brown, who has freely admitted to her involvement in the criminal activities of the Black Panthers, has long been chief suspect in the murder of Betty Van Patten, a middle-aged mother of 4 who had been the Panthers' bookkeeper before being found floating in the San Francisco Bay with her head caved in. You may not be surprised to learn that Brown kept to her radical principles by marrying a rich Frenchman, and she now lives in a chateau near Paris while being lionised as a great black feminist. Dawn, for her part, was one of the leading figures and organisers for the Weather Underground, a terrorist group who planted numerous bombs and carried out targeted assassinations in the 1970s. Dawn was on the FBI's 10 most wanted list for a decade, though difficulties in procuring evidence meant she ultimately escaped consequences for her undoubted complicity in the Weather Underground's crimes. But she was also outspoken in her adoration for Charles Manson and his family's brutal murder of Sharon Tate, who was killed when she was 8.5 months pregnant. Dawn even gloated about how they'd stabbed the pregnant Tate in the stomach with a fork, cheering that the murder of her unborn child was wild. She then began making a fork sign with her hand in reference to this, and that became the group's customary greeting. Dawn has also gone on to an affluent career with a law firm and a university. All of this was given a Stalinist whitewash by the BBC. But imagine someone commissioned a series on, say, the Scar scene of the early 80s. Do you think the BBC would give airtime to a couple of right-wing thugs implicated in similar violence, and then to fail to even mention it, to allow them to simply recall the heady excitement of their youth while covering up their vile crimes? If you've ever seen the BBC, you'll know there's absolutely zero chance of that happening. So if you've ever said that the BBC are impartial, then seriously, shut up. Oh, and Boris, scrap the licence fee. Now. If you've enjoyed this film, please like and subscribe. And if you're interested in these topics, I've written 2 books which go into them in extensive detail. They're called The Tyranny of the Left, and they're available on the links below. Please feel free to pick them up and let me know what you think. Thank you.